So here are 3 ways to keep the faith during benzo recovery. Number 1, celebrate victories. I can't say this enough. We get so caught up, just hyper focused on all the failings, all the negativity, all the shortcomings, the setbacks, the bad days, and we really lose sight of it. I mean, you could have a bunch of great days in a month, and we really just focus on the bad. We could have 3 great days and then have a bad day, and for some reason, the bad always takes precedent, right? And this seems to be, the case with everything. I mean, just with people in general. I mean, you could spend your life doing a lot of great things, and people remember that one negative. So there's something in us, I don't know, something in our brains. We're wired to see negativity before we see positivity. And I think that's important to remember, first off, because that is a real phenomenon. So you have to look at it and realize that you're likely not seeing things clearly. If you're focusing on the negative, you're likely not seeing things clearly. And one thing we do is we often say, well, I'm being a realist. I'm a realist. But yeah, to a point, but also you're being a negativist. Is that a word? Negativist? Yeah, probably should be. But you're being negative. But the problem is you don't feel being negative. You don't feel like you're being negative, and you're not a negative person per se. You might be a really positive person. But nonetheless, we're just sort of hardwired to look at the darkness over the light. We are hardwired to gravitate toward negative things over positive things, and that's a shame. And I really think and it's part of my own spirituality, I guess. I don't know why I said that word, spirituality. It's my spirituality, my spiritual core, I guess. I really believe that we're almost by evolution, biologically, kind of a lot of us miswired in a way, a sort of an evolutionary hangover to look at the negative, to hold on to fear, then love and hope and things like that. And I really, really, truly feel in my heart, I mean, I think it's a science as far as my light's concerned, that all of us have to sort of reprogram ourselves at some point throughout our lives to gravitate away from fear and gravitate toward love. It's like we have to run a antiviral program of our life, almost, of our thoughts, see where the gaps are, where these problems are coming up, and we all have them. I mean, we all have them to some degree, and then sort of just rewiring it to seeing the better. And I don't mean look at life with rose-colored glasses, everything's positive and rainbows, and no. I mean, you can be a realist, but again, even if you're a realist, you have to realize that we're hardwired to focus on the negative. So while you may think you're focusing in a realistic perspective, you're probably focusing more on the negative. Okay, so again, celebrate victories. Okay, celebrating victories is going to allow us and help us, aid us in keeping proper alignment in our perception. It's going to help us cognitively reframe. That old buzzword, cognitively reframe. So write it down. I talk, and that leads me to my second way to keep the faith during benzo withdrawal tip, and that's to keep a log on windows and improvement. This will help you celebrate the victories. You'll be able to see the victories and over time, and that'll help with the celebration, because it's almost like if you win one, you have one good day, you go, oh, what's the point? There's so much other worse days ahead of me and behind me. But it's not about that. I mean, it's really about gaining some momentum with this thing and trying to change perception, and that leads me to number 3, we are what we surround ourselves with. Okay, so if we are feeling fatalistic, we're feeling like a victim, we're surrounding ourselves with negative people or people in bad situations, and that's all we're hearing, that becomes our reality tunnel, to borrow an old expression from Timothy Leary. It becomes, and reality tunnel is really, it's a fancy word of saying you're kind of clothed in your thoughts. And that's why we have cognitive reframing in the first place. So, it's to shed the skin of the negative, of the negative ideas and energy, I guess you could say, that we surround ourselves with, and just getting to something more positive, more realistic. So let me run through these again. Celebrate your victories. I mean, if you're having a good day, celebrate that. If you are riding, if you're like me and you couldn't initially even come out of the house, and then I started walking to the mailbox, which is, a small victory, But I celebrated. I said, hey, good, look at this. I did this. I couldn't do it before. Now I'm doing it. That's special. Okay, now I couldn't drive my car for a little bit. Now I'm driving again, albeit at night, but I'm driving again. Great. This is a victory. This is progress. This is positive. You know, all along the way, celebrate your victories. If I go to a grocery store and I don't freak out, that's a victory. Driving on the highway, that's a victory. Having a friend over and being over to keep it cool while I'm kind of dealing with that anxiety, that's a victory. Celebrate victories. Keep a log on windows and improvement. This is going to help you so much really gain perspective on the situation, because you, like I said, you only feel the negative. So at some point, you kind of convince yourself that you didn't have any good days. You don't have windows, and you lose sight of it very quickly. And you can look back in the log and say, oh, that's not true. I had 3 windows last month, or I've had 5 windows this month. That's an improvement. And you can see it over time. You can look at it and go, okay, back in January, I was only having 1 window, and then by March I had 3, and this month I had 5 here now in May. That's inspirational. That should help you see clearly, hey, I am healing. And that's gonna really help you build momentum and keep your focus and keep the faith in your recovery. And finally, surround yourself with positive support. I talk a lot about these benzo forums can be toxic. These comment sections can be toxic. Videos on channels on YouTube can be toxic. And that's no slight, again, on anybody. I'm not saying I haven't identified anybody that's toxic. It's just, it becomes toxic for us when all we're seeing is the suffering and the negativity and the bad news and the bad stories. I mean, it's like, watching CNN, or Fox News all day long. It's just one horror story after another, and it starts to paint this picture in your mind that, like, this is the world. Racism and violence and rape and trauma, and it's just, and then you go outside and it's like the birds are chirping, people wave. It's not the world that you live in. Not exactly. I mean, sure, these things are happening, just like with benzos. There are people that are really damaged, that are really struggling to keep together. There are people that take their lives, unfortunately, But look, there's also a lot of people that get completely healed, get fully recovered, and go on to be even better than they were before. And my thing is, where are their stories? Why can't we celebrate those? Why is that not the more of the norm in the narrative? And I do suspect that the part of it is we're afraid almost to celebrate those things. 1, because we're afraid that we won't be there and we don't want to sort of jinx ourselves. And 2, we know there's something really wrong with benzodiazepines and mental health in psychiatry. And it's almost like you don't want to play it down. And you're almost afraid to acknowledge that, yeah, most people get better, because that seems like you're doing a disservice and an injustice to the cause of benzos. But let me tell you, you're not. There is a problem with benzos. I don't care if 90% of people get better. The 10% that are being gaslighted by their doctors, that are having permanent damage or semi-permanent damage, long-term damage, suicidal ideation, just people that are struggling and becoming disabled and losing it all, this has to stop. I mean, protocols need to be changed for prescription, for duration, and for taper, coming off the drug. So, as always, I ramble on in every topic, but I don't know how to make a quick 3, okay, here's my 3 ways to keep faith during benzo recovery. Celebrate victories, keep a log on windows and improvement, and surround yourself with positive support. I'd rather articulate a little bit more. All right, guys, so that's 3 ways to keep the faith during benzo recovery. If you have more, and I know there's more, share it below. I mean, I really could have added a lot more to this, but I wanted to keep it short and sweet. But I would love to hear from you. What are some other ways that we can keep the faith during recovery?